we'll come back and get ready to meditate. As you're setting up, it's just good to remind ourselves about what we are saluting. So we're saluting our potential by saluting the Buddha. We also have the capacity to become awakened human beings. And we're also saluting the way, the path, the teachings that he left for us, and then the fellowship of those who tread the way, yourselves and all of us who are practicing, who are growing and developing and making that kind of commitment to come to class, to do things that make us feel happy and well. Okay, so getting a sense of your posture, always taking time to set up the posture. So in this meditation, we're going to look at the change in nature of experience, the breath, thought, motion, sensation in the body, sound. So we're going to start by getting that sense of the grounding, soles and feet on the earth, through the floor, and wherever you are, feeling your toes spreading. The soles of your feet. Calf muscles in the back of your legs. Back of the thighs. Both legs beginning to let go any stress or strain of the day. Moving into the pelvis, pelvic floor, hips, buttocks. Feeling the connection between the cushion or chair, the support. Surrendering, letting go. Stomach, lower back, upper back, shoulders, back of the neck, back of the head, crown of the head. The face, soft face. Throat. Shoulders, dropping your shoulders away from the ears. Beginning to relax. rib cage, whole body. The whole body seated in a meditation posture. What are you aware of in the body? Maybe sensations of breathing, maybe a bit of gurgling, stomach, vibration. Bring your attention to your hands. Moving as if you're moving into your hands, feeling any sensation there. Notice tingling. Other sensations you're picking up. Tightness. Bring in awareness to open that up. Awareness to wherever you might feel discomfort. Is it all the same? Different sensations? Is the breath changing? Stay curious. There's no end to seeing. There's nothing fixed in our experience. Things change all the time. Thoughts in your head, notice how you're feeling. Happy, sad, irritated. Some things in between all of that. Stay curious. Notice how our experience changes. The breath, thoughts, feeling tone. sensation in the body. Do the third stage of the mindfulness of breathing. You're just following your own natural rhythm of the breath. For about 5 minutes. Where are you now? Notice what's going on. Thoughts in your head. Breath. Body sensations. Come back to the breathing body. And then when you're ready, just dropping the meditation. Just sitting for a couple of moments with the effects of the practice. And when you're ready, opening your eyes. So you may have noticed when you were meditating that we tend to go into particular places, particularly thought patterns. They're noticeable when we bring our attention to them. And they're usually to do with something that's happened to us today, maybe something that we need to sort out, or it could be just something to do with pleasure. We think about the cake we're going to have later on. And we have habitual patterns of behavior which create stories around people, places. And we all do it as part of being a human being. So we're going to look at this evening. What's that about and how it fits into our journey from the reactive to the creative, from the reactive to the responsive in a skillful way. And Rijamuni will be talking about that after the break. You know, we can think, oh, I have so many habits, but we all have habitual tendencies. And there are some, you know, maybe we just want to change. So in order for us to do that, we have to see what we do. And a big part of the Dharma life is actually seeing what we do and not adding on to it, giving ourselves a hard time. So we're drifting and we're involved in some sort of planning an adventure, a holiday. We come back to the breath. We just notice that without kind of, almost bringing out like the police, just a very gentle way, in a very curious and connecting way. That habitual type of behavior is useful. It's a useful area to work at, the building of stories and the liberation of that, moving on this spiral path, moving into the confidence, the shroud of confidence, the trust, to go. It's not like we're going higher even though I'm doing that. It's actually the deepening, the deepening, the deepening, the deepening. So last week we looked at the wheel, the reactive way, that pattern of just being locked in pleasure, pain, moving from one to the other. And in all of that, there isn't anything fixed in it. It's impermanence, things are moving. And if we want to get free of suffering, we move to the spiral. And we do things like come to classes, go on retreats, hanging out with people who are like-minded, all that helps. So you were looking then at your life in that way. And this week, did you notice anything? Did you notice that sense of being reactive and creative? So we're going to break into groups now for 15 minutes, and you can chat away about that. Now, so a couple of groups, the last 5 minutes, myself and Ruth are really going to pop into your groups between now and the end of these classes. So this week we'll just come in after 10 minutes to just see if you have any questions or anything you want to raise. And then next week we'll do the other 2 groups, so no big deal. Yeah, so we have Claire then 15 minutes just to look at. One of the things that I was saying last year was pay attention, look carefully, stay curious. There's no end to seeing. And in that frame, what did we notice about the reactive and creative mind in our own experience? That's more or less it.
Just looking at everyone. Great, fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about essentially what is, I might call it, a turning point in the nature of this course. So this course is about the taste of freedom. And we would have been talking about, since the beginning of the course, what the taste of freedom is. What do we mean by freedom? We've been talking about reacting versus responding. We've been talking about the dakini, the power of the dakini, that image just over my right-hand shoulder, which gives us the energy and positivity and inspiration to kind of make the changes, to break free of what we've described as kind of the circle. And as Pranya Mai beautifully illustrated, kind of moving up onto a spiral, a more creative way of responding. That's kind of where we've been. But for the last 3 weeks of the course, tonight, next week, and the following week, we're going to be talking about 3 particular fetters which hold us back from progress on the spiritual path. So I just want to be really honest and just say, it's really possible to gain enlightenment in this lifetime, or at least what's known as stream entry, or another word might be irreversibility. But the Buddhist tradition says there are 10 fetters, 10 things that bind us, 10 things that hold us back from being enlightened. You could see them as being 10 ways, 10 things we do. You could see them as 10 habits, 10 ways we use our mind. I prefer the not the translation, but the description, 10 ways we kind of use our consciousness. And I'll say quite a bit about consciousness as my talk develops. So there are ways we act, habits we have that bind us, that fetter us from making progress on the spiritual path. The beauty of the 3 of the 10, so we're going to be talking about one tonight, the second one next week, and the third one the last week. Those 3 in particular are important because they're successive, right? In the sense that if you break one, you'll break the other 2, or they're often spoken about as being broken together. And if you do break these 3 fetters, enlightenment is assured, okay? You enter what's known as stream entry, irreversibility. You can't go back in the progress you've made. It's like literally throwing yourself into a stream. The current takes you on to enlightenment, as the expression is. You will taste freedom. You will be free, and hence the name of this course. So I just think that's really optimistic. It's amazing, really. So there's 10 fetters, and 3 of them by the week 3, you'll not only know what they are, you'll be starting to break them, I hope. And yeah, just how inspiring and optimistic is that we can just become aware of them and start to work on them right now if you haven't already. So what are they? The first one is personality view or fixed view. The second one is over-reliance on rites and rituals as ends in themselves. And Pranyamai will be talking about that next week. And the third one is skeptical doubt. And I'll be giving a talk on that on the last week in 2 weeks' time. So I don't need to talk about the ones that are coming up. But I do want to make the point that once these 3 fetters are broken, you've reached a stage, as I've said, of irreversibility. Enlightenment is assured. But I think at this juncture, it's important to kind of say, well, what is enlightenment? Well, if I'm honest, I have no idea what it is because I'm not enlightened. But what I know it's not is that it's not something. I had this image of Captain Jean-Luc Picard on the deck of the Starship Enterprise, and he says to whoever, engage, and they all kind of take off. It's not sort of a location we get to. It's not sort of a location somewhere outside time and space. It's not an existing phenomenon. It's not a planet that we kind of inhabit. Enlightenment only exists by virtue of people becoming enlightened. You might even say without Buddhists there would be no enlightenment. So it's not out there in essence. It's in here. I've just realised that's the title of what's that order member's name? Pranyamai, that wrote a book, Dana Priya, is it? I just realised what his book is about now. I've never read the book. I must go and buy it now. Anyway, so yeah, it's not out there, it's in here. That's exactly the title of his book. What we're really trying to do is, in this pursuit of enlightenment, is to wake up, to free ourselves from conditioned reactive behaviour. But that's all very well and good. What are we really trying to do? We're really trying to find out who we are. We're really trying to experience to the depth of our being, of our psyche, who exactly we are. And in essence, that involves this process called waking up, which is why we spend so much time talking about mindfulness. At this point, I have a little bit to say about fixed personality view. So this is what the topic of this talk, this particular fetter is. And it does require a little bit of, I was preparing the talk and I don't want to be too intellectual, but I do have to communicate something. So I'll try and kind of keep this as understandable as possible, yeah. But basically, we have this personality view or fixed view, and we're trying, and it's a fetter. It's holding us back from progress on the path to enlightenment. It's the first of the 10 fetters. In that sense, you could see it as a key. If we can break this fetter, we can turn the key, open the door, and step forward onto the path to enlightenment. So you can see by implication, to the extent to which we don't break this fetter of fixed view or personality view, the door is locked. We can't kind of make much further growth. So this is a really, really important habit fetter to try and break. So what on earth is it? Well, we tend to construct a fixed view or a self view or a personality view. Let's keep it simple and just use the words a self view. We tend to construct a self view out of our experience. So I want to talk about, well, what is our experience? We talk a lot about not so much self-image. That's a different thing, Mairead. And that's kind of how we project ourselves. It's outwards. It's more about how we see ourselves. It's much more fundamental. We talk a lot in Buddhism about being with your experience. What is your experience? I came along to the Buddhist Centre in 2002 and they kept saying that. And I recall thinking, I have no idea what my experience is. I don't even know what the question means. What is my experience? To me, an experience is going on holidays. It's kind of having experiences. It's collecting experiences. But that's not necessarily what we're getting at. So in Buddhism, there are 5 basic components of human experience. Yeah. These 5 explain, if you like, the totality of what we experience as reality, and by extension, ourselves experiencing it. Okay. So there's 5 aspects to all your experience. One is form, yeah. One is sensation or feeling. The next one is perception. The next one is mental formation, and the next one is consciousness. Actually, Claire, might be no harm just putting them in the chat, just for people to kind of have a look at. So I'll just say them again slowly. So the first one is form. The second one is sensation or feeling. The third one is perception. The fourth one is mental formations, and the fifth one is consciousness. The beauty of this, guys, is you can just save that to your device, so you don't have to write it down. I want you to, just relax and not have to be as you would in university, trying to hang on every word. So, form. Form are all of the things in the world that come into our senses. Okay, we have 6 senses. In Buddhism, we have 6 senses. We have eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and in Buddhism we have the mind as a sense. So we see things, we see form. I'm looking here and I can see this bell. So my eye comes into contact with this, sorry, a bit lower down, this bell. This is the form of bell, yeah. My eyes see things, my ears hear things, I taste things, I can smell things. And probably the most active and the one we're trying to work at deeper levels is the consciousness. The mind produces senses and produces form. And you know this, as Pranayama said in meditation, you become aware of all the things that are going through your mind when you're meditating. That is the mind creating form. So you're probably thinking, well, so what? That is the first component of experience. We have all these senses, and we reach out, in essence, or rather they reach to us, form, and it takes the shape of thoughts, things we smell, things we touch, things we see, things we hear, all that kind of stuff. When that form meets whatever sense picks it up, we have a feeling, yeah, and that feeling is generally pleasant, painful, or neutral. The next step in this process called experience is perception. This is where we mentally label what the thing is. So I'm talking to you, I'm paying attention to you, I'm listening, and I glance to one side and I see this, my eyes come in contact with this bell. This whole 5-stage process of experience happens so quickly, but the mental labeling going on identifies it as bell. So that's perception. The next one is mental formations or volitions. Our mind then decides what we want to do, having come into contact with that bell. Do we want to ring it? What do we want to do? Yeah. And lastly, the last aspect of experience is consciousness. It's that aspect of our experience that feels, in essence, that we're aware of this whole process. It's probably the part of your mind now that's listening to me thinking, yeah, I can understand all of that. But we do more than understand, if you like. The consciousness element sort of appropriates this delusion that we're in control of this whole process. Okay. So this all happens really, really quickly. You know, we hear I'm trying to give a practical example. We see something. Let's just use the bell again. We come into contact with the bell. Yeah, we have a sensation. The second one, we feel pleasant because we hear it. We hear it making a little noise. Generally speaking, that's of a pleasant variety. Perception is we're able to notice it. the mental formations are the sense that we want to move towards it or move away from it, or we're indifferent to it, which is why, for example, in the Metabhavana, we have different categories of people that stimulate particular emotional responses. The second stage stimulates emotional engagement around a pleasant person. So it's to kind of engender a kindly awareness towards something we like. The neutral person is more trying to engender an awareness around something we don't like or dislike. And the fourth stage is about trying to engender a sense of kindly awareness towards difficult people. So it's things we like, things we're indifferent to, and things we don't like. The Buddhist tradition, the really early, I don't have the reference to which early sutta it is, but they have a lovely simile for each of these different five. And I'll just read them out here. It says, in sum, all of these five aggregates, they're called, or skandhas, are, where's it gone? In sum, all of these five aggregates, or skandhas, as the central aspects, are usually taken as I and mine. But in reality, they are just a bit of foam, a few bubbles, a mirage, some plantain sheaths, I'll explain what that is in a minute, and a magic trick. And that's all. Now, I just find sometimes it's great to have the information and the cognitive aspect, but sometimes these similes, images are great. Really what it's saying is that which my eyes or my ear or my nose or my tongue, that which reaches out and comes into form, is constantly changing. You know, I'm not constantly looking at a bell. You know, there's so many different things that I'm picking up through my eyes, ears, nose, that never stays fixed. So there's no fixed aspect of the form that comes into my senses. Yeah. The sensations, the feelings that I feel having come into contact with the bell, or something unpleasant, something I don't like tasting, whatever, that never stays fixed, as you probably know. 1 minute you like something, and 10 seconds later you dislike something else. Sometimes you can even dislike something and like something all in the same moment. And so there's nothing fixed about the sensations or feelings. I can't recall, it might have been Mairead who asked a question about feeling tearful and something in meditation. When you come to kind of really see this at a deeper level, there is that sense that we really ought not to get too attached to our feelings. I don't mean deeper emotions now, that's different, but our feelings, because a lot of the time they're just fleeting anyway. So there's nothing fixed in the second aspect or the second component of this experience called sensation. The perception, the fact that I label it as a bell, but obviously there's nothing fixed in that, because that's always changing, because I'm not always looking at a bell, I'm looking at you on screen, I'm looking around this room. So there's nothing fixed in the perceptions or labeling I do on my experience. The mental formations or the volitions, what I decide to do, the actual actions or the habits or the reactive behaviors, usually, that I decide to act upon, having come into contact with that's always changing as well, because the stimulus, the actual form is changing. And lastly, consciousness, that which perceives. I mean, that's continually changing as well. You know this in meditation. You know, you're not. The thoughts that are going through your mind are just like clouds passing across the sky. I mean, they're just sometimes very slow, and there are some persisting thoughts in your mind that you just can't get rid of. Usually things you don't like, or things that are worrying you, or consistent plans, or other types of hindrances. But invariably they all kind of pass across the sky. And what this lovely simile is saying, that the form are just like the foam that's created after the beach, the tide goes out. It's just, it comes and goes. It's just like foam. The feelings that you feel are like bubbles on the surface of water during heavy rain. The perceptions that you have, oh, that's a bell, that changes, that's just like a mirage. There's nothing fixed about that. The volitions or the formations, in other words, the habits, the things that you decide to act and do and move towards the bell. It's not just enough to hear a bell. Maybe I'll go and buy a bell. Maybe I'll go on Google and look at all the bells. Maybe this, I don't know if you do this. I do lots of reviews of things. It's not enough to kind of crave something. Well, I'll go on to lots of different websites and do you can spend hours reviewing things. That's, if you like, in essence, formations. That's what I've done. So I've just heard a bell. It wasn't enough just to appreciate it. I want to go and buy one. And I just spent ages doing kind of research. There is nothing inherently me about that. And the image, the simile here is a plantain sheath. I have no idea what a plantain sheath is. I gather it's a tree that when you start peeling off the bark like an onion, if you peel off enough successive amounts of sheets of wood, there's nothing at the center of it. Like an onion, you just peel off the layers. And lastly, consciousness, this illusion or delusion that in somehow we are in control of this entire process is described as a magic trick, an illusion. So I've spent quite a bit of time talking about that. You're probably thinking, God, that's a lot. It's taken me a long time to kind of feel my way into the significance of all of that. And the significance of it is that there is nothing fixed in all of that. Yeah. But we think there is, we have this mental and emotional sort of fixation on ourselves, that in somehow we're in control of our experience. It's just a fabrication. And while it's very seductive to do and think and behave like that, because it gives us a sense of identity and meaning, it's just from a Buddhist perspective, it's a false way of seeing experience. Where does it come from? Well, we're not born with it. This obsession, this mental and emotional fixation with the sense of ourselves at the center of our experience, we're certainly not born with it. I've read that it comes along in infancy, along with the development of language, basic socialization skills, that kind of thing. So it's not something we're born with, but it's also not something we can avoid, because it is kind of evolutionary. Yeah? It's kind of it's probably based around kind of a survival function. We can't not have it. But the Buddha discovered during his path through awakening that while we can't not have it, and while it sort of just comes along in our development, it has its downsides. This fixed sense of self. Other traditions might even call it this kind of soul, this kind of fixed entity that doesn't change. It's just an illusory, mental fabrication, really. So I've said it's really important to kind of be able to see that for what it is. And it takes a long time to see it. You're probably listening to me going, yeah, that all makes sense. But to kind of really see that in your experience, to see that you have this mental and emotional fixation of you being at the center of all your experience. And probably more practically, that you see yourself as the center of the entire universe. Anyone think that they're the center of the entire universe and that everything just exists to kind of facilitate and service them? Most people do, but it couldn't be true, because if everyone thinks that, well, everyone couldn't be the center of the same universe, right? So the only point I'm making is that it's important that we kind of recognize this, and that it's crucial to try to deepen our understanding of it, because otherwise the key to the rest of the path, the breaking down of this particular first of the 10 fetters, hinders our progress on the path. Feel like no key, no door opens. The path doesn't really begin. So one of the ways in which this fixed view or this fixed self or personality view manifests are habits. For those of you then who have read the booklet we sent out, the PDF on the Taste of Freedom, Bhante, the author of the book, Sangharakshita, describes, I think he did I wouldn't have Googled in them days, but he came across a definition, and he said, a habit is a tendency or a disposition to act in a particular way. So a tendency or a disposition to act in a particular way. So habit is a matter of action. It's something that we do. It's part of ourselves. We're always acting. We're always physically doing something. You might even say we are our actions. We don't exist apart from the things that we do. We don't exist apart from them. And the fact that we have a tendency or a disposition to act in a particular way, it means that we have a tendency to be in a particular way. Bhante says, puts it really well. He says, we are the sum total of our habits. In essence, we are the sum total of our actions. He quite provocatively then goes on to say, we are our habits. You are just a habit. I find that quite arresting. It's kind of, oh God, it's not just I have habits, some good ones, lots of not so good ones, Some that I know I desperately need to try and change, and I've been trying to change for years. But to be kind of told, but that's all I am. I am just my habits. I find that arresting, provocative, and very, very inspiring. He says, the person we think of as whoever, me, and recognize as acting in a certain way is just a habit that's got into a particular stream of consciousness. I just think that's really profound. So the person we think of as whoever and recognize as acting in a particular way has just gotten into the habit, or sorry, it's just a habit that's gotten into a particular stream of consciousness, and since this habit has gotten into a stream of consciousness, it can get out of a stream of consciousness. That's why I'm a Buddhist in a nutshell. If I thought that I was a product of my psychology and conditioning and upbringing and all of the things that have led to me being who I am, and that was not possible to break free of all of that conditioned behavior and tendencies and all the things that have happened to me, good, bad, and indifferent, all the interactions I've had with people, good, bad, and indifferent, and my genes, all sorts of things. If I wasn't able to break free of that and act, as Pranayama puts it, in a responsive as opposed to reactive way, I don't know. I don't know what I do in my life, really. Yeah, it's just been amazing to come across that the Buddha kind of discovered that you don't have to be this particular disposition or tendency. You don't have to act in this particular way. So breaking this fetter 1 of 10, breaking this fetter of habit means getting out of the habit of being the kind of person that you are. Getting out of the habit of being the way that you are. Being the kind of person who behaves in a certain way. You don't have to be the way you are. It's just a habit you've gotten into. So what we're saying is, it's a habit you can get into. You can get out of it. You can even take it one step further and say breaking the fetter of habit means getting rid of the old self. Getting rid of the past self, starting to become someone who is more aware, more emotionally positive, more emotionally appropriate. And what I mean by that is, like sometimes things happen to you, or rather things happen to other people, and you can just have, without even wishing or meaning to have, you can just have a wholly inappropriate emotional response. Things like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something. Jealousy or resentment. Some friend of yours has some fortune, I don't know, to win the lottery or something. And you give them the superficial, oh, that's great, oh, that's fantastic, you must go somewhere nice on holidays. But really deeply down, you're absolutely seething because it wasn't you that won the lottery. We can have these deeply emotionally inappropriate responses. Or the corollary might be a friend has some misfortune. And rather than listen to them trying to articulate and share what their misfortune is, you go into kind of fix it mode and you say, well, why don't you do this, that, and the other? And really, that's just an attempt to make yourself feel better at somehow trying to control the situation. And that's maybe not what the person needs at all. So that's what I mean by emotionally appropriate. So what we're trying to do is get rid of an old self, try and move past the past self and become a more aware, emotionally positive, creative, responsible, sensitive sort of person. It's not easy to do, though. It's not easy to break our habits. I'm sure some of you have noticed that, I'm laughing. I walk the dog in the mornings. There's a gym around the corner from me. And I see all these people in the gym in the mornings because it's on the upper floor level. And it's all big ceiling to floor glass windows. And at the start of the year, the gym was packed, absolutely packed. I don't know how people could even walk around the place, never mind use the machines. Now there's nobody there. I look up in the mornings on the same route and there's about 2 or 3 people on the machines. And these are people with the best will in the world probably decided, you know what? I'm going to give up this habit of eating junk food and Christmas is over and I probably spoiled myself. I'm going to join the gym and I'm going to start this new habit. And by February, it's probably a well-known phenomenon. People kind of give it up. But I'm sure there are loads of different examples of habits that you and I have that are just less than helpful. So it's important to be aware, and in particular, be aware of the habits that we have, and be aware of the ways in which we behave and we act. But I think this is really important. One of the reasons why it's also difficult to break a habit is actually other people, because other people have also gotten into the habit of experiencing you a certain way and are quite, unbeknownst to themselves, you might even say, reluctant to see you in any other sort of way. So there's something about identifying your habits, breaking this fetter of habit, trying to become free of this old self, this past tendency or a way of being. But at the same time, trying to become free of situations and people and environments and groups that kind of hold you back from growing. It's not like the groups control you in any sort of way, but they only ever see you in a certain way. And it's very hard to kind of break free of that. And that in and of itself makes it difficult to behave in a different way. I see that myself with family. My family still see me the same way I think I was before I even started this path at 18 years ago. That can be quite difficult. I can't actually talk to them. I couldn't talk to them in the way I'm talking to you now. They just wouldn't understand, wouldn't respond. And yeah, that can be in and of itself a fetter. So it's important to notice that we have these habits and we're trying to kind of break free of them. But that there is a difficulty. It can be difficult to break habits, and some of that difficulty can be the way other people have gotten into the habit of seeing us. And that's why we need the support of coming on these courses, why we need the support of engaging with people like yourselves in the breakout groups, why we have a Buddhist Centre, why we physically have a venue that you can actually go to and meet like-minded people who are trying to do the same that you're doing. I'm going to finish by just reminding you that this is the first fetter to be broken. We will be talking about the other two in the next 2 weeks. But I just want to finish with that sense of how wonderfully positive and optimistic a vision the Buddha created, that if we can break these fetters, enlightenment is assured in our lifetime, or at least irreversibility. We'll keep making progress. I just find that very inspiring. And I just want to kind of leave you with that kind of note of optimism. Yeah, I might stop there. I've probably said enough. So that's the fetter of habit. Yeah, I just wondered what your response was to all of that.
Can I ask something? Like the whole thing you said about social conditioning. So I suppose I would have a little bit of an awareness of that. And I just wonder about trying to figure out what I'm trying to say, trying to notice our habits and stuff. You know, the way sometimes you don't know what you don't know about yourself. So like, I mean, I have daughters and sons. So that's where over the years, this whole social conditioning thing has really kind of come into my head. And I've even said things to other parents at times like, you know, oh, we're very gender neutral in our house and we try this and we try that. And then I'd realize actually like there's so many layers, and you notice the first layer and you think, you know, I'm not raising like, you know, gendered children, and then it just keeps going on and keeps going on and keeps going on. So like when you're trying to free yourself from the fetter of your habits, like how do you know that you've gotten to all of your habits? Or do you just keep learning all the time that you know, is it like the onion again? Because if you want to use the key to get on the path, like when do you know you've broken enough habits?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's important to remember that this whole idea of the breaking the 3 fetters and the 10 fetters, it is only a model. It's not, I mean, the Buddha literally didn't say these words. It is a model to explain it. But the point being that it's of such significance breaking the first fetter to the path that it is, the language I think that was used was the price we pay for having this fixed view of me being, well, I'm always like this and I have this. It's not so much that I have bad habits. It's not that, I mean, it's not that I just put too much sugar in my tea or whatever. You know, I mean, I don't put any sugar in my tea, but I'm just trying to think of a silly example. But it's not that I just have habits. It's not the habits in and of themselves, so to speak. It's the fact that we tend to see ourselves in a fixed sort of way that fundamentally can't change. Sure, I can give up sugar in my tea. Sure, I can stay with a gym subscription in January for more than a month. Sure, I can talk in ways and teach my kids things that will be helpful and beneficial and all the rest of it for them. But fundamentally, we kind of have this view that the person that I am on a deeper level isn't sort of changing. So on one sense, this image of a key, and we need to kind of see this fetter, and that progress is barred until we put the key and turn the key and open and start the path. In a way, that could be seen as quite unhelpful. It's kind of like, oh, I could spend the next 30 years trying to work on my habits and never break any of them and still be stuck at the door. And you'd probably give up and just knock on the door and say, Lord, let me in, I want to start this path. So it is just a model of certain ways of seeing it. But you're right, on another level, you do see that when you are meditating, as Pranjamai mentioned when we were doing the meditation earlier on, you will start to see that there are certain things that occupy your mind over and over and over and over again. That's why it's so important to have a regular meditation practice. Because if you only meditate now and again, you don't see the things that come into your mind. You don't see the things that hinder your mind. You don't see restlessness or doubt or worry or planning or jealousy, or you don't see all of these things when you only meditate now and again. So it's very hard to know what to work on. So it's with a regular practice do you start to see not just the habit, but the patterns, the repetitive patterns, the ways in which when I give myself to my meditation practice, this particular thing keeps coming in all of the time. So you're right, it is something that you could probably spend the entire rest of your life trying to deconstruct and see. But that starts with becoming more aware that on a fundamental level you can change. And that gives you the confidence, the Shraddha, which is, as you know, the start of this spiral path, to know that on a deeper level, I can fundamentally change.